Welcome to Silent Symptoms, a Black mental health podcast. I am your host, Hiatus, a Florida-based therapist. This podcast focuses on mental health, stigmas, and social injustices that affect the Black community. This podcast was created to bring awareness about mental health and can be used as an educational guide, but this is not to be used as a replacement for seeking help from a therapist. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Silent Symptoms, a Black mental health podcast. This is your host, Hiatus. Hello, my beautiful people. I know I have been on a hiatus for a little while now. I will say that it was much needed, and it was a time for me to reflect. So I am back. So sometimes we just need to take a break from the things that we love, the things that we devote our time to. So the reason why I took some time away from, the podcast, I started to feel overwhelmed. I started to feel a lot of pressure because there were a lot of changes that were happening in my life at the time. So the podcast was another commitment that I had, and it was one that I had devoted my time to that I loved very much. And during that time, with my move and with a lot of changes, starting a new job, it was really difficult for me to dedicate myself 100% to my podcast. And I'm not one to just throw something together and say, here we are, this is a product. I knew that, there was a lot of pressure, and I knew that if I'm working under pressure, then the stuff that I do produce is not always going to be the greatest because it will be produced out of rush, out of necessity. And I told myself, okay, hold up. What are you doing this for? And I knew that when I started the podcast, I wanted to give information to, the people that mean a lot to me. I wanted to create a platform that was for Black mental health, which is one sector that is not recognized as much. Now that we have social media, there's a little bit of awareness, but not everybody is really forthcoming with their mental health. So I decided that, this is the time for me to have a seat. And I wanted to build up my private practice. And with my private practice, I decided that this is the time to start. I was reclaiming my time. So what I did was, I said, I'm going to sit out for a little while from the podcast so I can focus on other goals so everything can all come together. So when I started working on my private practice, and I also was working on my new job. There were a lot of changes that were happening in my life. So what I did was I focused on that, because I knew that once I started private practice, I could have more content to provide to people from things that I'm seeing from my clients. Because some things that, have really pushed me to create this podcast from more real life experiences that were happening through family, friends, and through my clients. So I said, I've been talking about private practice for so long, so I'm going to start doing it. And I started to dedicate my time to that. So in the meantime, the podcast had to have a seat. And sometimes it is necessary for the things that are developing to have a seat. Okay. I had to take a break and say, this is my baby. My baby is not going to go anywhere. And the people who are riding for me are going to be there when I return. And one thing that I will say, I didn't really announce my break. I think that's an error on my part. I should have said, hey, Silent Symptoms will be taking a hiatus. I'll be back. And that would have been a much better delivery, because some people were asking, hey, where's the podcast? And, people were kind of worried about me. And I really do appreciate it. Nothing's wrong. I just wanted to develop other babies so it could all coincide with this baby. So I have started my private practice. It's actually called Solace Counseling and Consulting, PLLC. So Solace Counseling and Consulting, PLLC. I'm also taking clients in Michigan and in Florida. So you can try to book me, and no family or friends. So don't even ask me, because I can't be your therapist. So I started on that baby, and that's something that I'm very proud of. So with that being said, this break allowed for me to do some critical reflection. I told myself, this is just not another break that I'm taking from this podcast. I'm developing my goals and I'm also doing amazing things. So what I did, I started working on my goals, and then I started to have a lot of mindfulness. I had to take the time to take a breather and focus on the things that actually matter to me. So I was like, the podcast is my baby, number one. I'm building our private practice, which is going to be my other baby. And I focused on being a brilliant human being, being a brilliant therapist, being a brilliant friend, daughter, sister, and all that. And you know what? Like, instead of me rushing back to, producing the podcast, I said, okay, what am I going to do differently this time? And, I do write down my content. Sometimes it's a conversation from my heart. But I felt like in order for me to put out information to people, I had to write certain things down so that the information that I'm giving is not straight from the top of my head, but factual information as well, which I always have done. I always give out facts, but then this would allow me to go in depth. So which means that I was reclaiming my time. That time was reclaimed. Like, that was a much needed break. And now I'm going to do a lot of things differently. And I had more time to rest, more time to reflect. And, during that time, I was also helping, my loved ones with certain things. So even in that time, I was able to be somebody else's disciple and work on their things to help them elevate. So that's part of being, the therapist in me and the lover in me. So when I put something down for a little while, it's not that I'm neglecting it. It's because I'm working on other things for it to all come together and for me to become a better individual and for me to elevate myself in a sense. Okay. So, I used to be the type of person to post all the time on social media. Now I really don't post much, but this is part of, I feel like, growth. Not everything is for the world to see. Not everything is for everybody to understand. So I thank you so much for you guys just riding with me throughout this break. And, I'm going to bring out content. And for all those people that have literally asked me to make videos and content about certain mental health issues, I will be on it. You will be hearing it. And I'm going to, literally message you and say, hey, this is the episode that you requested, and I'm not forgetting. So I'm going to get that done as soon as possible. Okay. And I'm going to go back to also featuring other people who are moguls in the field. I appreciate you for riding and rocking with me. This is Katasso, and I hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Thank you for tuning in. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. You can catch us on Anchor and all your favorite media streams. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Silent Symptoms Podcast. Let us know if you have any feedback or topics that you would like to hear.